working group conference call webinar. Let me just go over a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So we plan on up to an hour and a half of time. I would ask if you would please self-mute your computer or phone if you're not speaking. We are going to open this as a conference call, so all participants will be able to speak. We do want to hear your suggestions, questions, etc. But if you're not actively speaking, if you could please mute, that would be helpful. If you're having problems with either audio or video, you can call into the IDA office at 508-366-9339. Or on the right side of your screen in the chat box, actually send a note to Cheryl Jakes, and she can assist. We will be recording the entire conference call webinar, so please understand that this is a public forum, and you should use sort of full discretion, in that regard. There'll be a brief survey at the conclusion, and then the webinar will be available later on. Once it's completed, we'll circulate a link so that people can share access to it with colleagues at a time more convenient to them. So it'll be fully available. If I could ask, if you're not actually, kind of speaking, please, if you would, mute your phone so that we don't hear distracting background. My name's Rob Thornton. Really, the catalyst for this call is Carlisle Catino. He's the Chief Operating Officer of EnWave, and he and his colleague Ken Morrison, Executive Vice President of Operations at EnWave, they urged us to, hold this webinar. And really, the intent is to establish a working group. These are unprecedented times. I think the COVID-19 pandemic is throwing a lot of challenges our way. The intent of this webinar conference call is to voluntarily share information, to identify resources, to make those available as possible to IDEA so that we can become a repository of information and make it more widely available. Specifically, the issues relevant to operating a district energy system in a city, campus, healthcare, etc. I'd like to sort of open it up for discussion on the first topic. Really, what are people experiencing in terms of the current risk level? Are you in a lockdown setting? Is travel restricted? And how is that impacting access to your facilities, safety, security, et cetera? And then finally, in that context, are you currently experiencing a work stoppage? Has construction been restricted in your area? So let's sort of begin there. If I could ask Carlisle or Ken, would you first care to comment?
Sure. Hello, Eric. I apologize. There's a lot of background noise. Oh, there it goes. I'm happy to start. Maybe, Ken, you can jump in as well. We've been going at this for about 3 or 4 weeks now, it feels like, just getting together our planning, our old pandemic SARS plans and updating them now. Sorry, I'm not sure if everyone can hear because there's a lot of background noise, but hopefully you guys can. I think that we have a North American business now, and we're in 12 different locations across North America, which we're monitoring, all of which are at different levels of security and safety and isolation, I guess, and segregation, depending on the city and what's been going on. Things are happening very, very fast. What we're generally seeing is that, when things escalate, they escalate so quickly that we've had the benefit of seeing it's a little bit of a West Coast sweeping eastbound as to how it's been going, and we're being able to prepare our operations in advance to be able to take advantage of, what we're seeing in other places. Right now in places like, in Canada specifically, in Ontario, construction is still happening, but we're seeing unions, we're hearing a lot of noise around how do you isolate sites that have thousands of workers and things like that. But the work continues on. I think it's for a matter of time. There's announcements. There's going to be one right now, actually. The Premier of Ontario is making an announcement right now on so there's regular, it's almost daily or every couple of days, and I highly doubt it's different in different states around the United States as well. So we're still seeing work. What we are doing is we're looking at critical work within our plants, really, and trying to isolate people. The idea right now is focus on segregation, isolation, and sanitization quite a bit, so that in the event there is, someone that does come in, with COVID-19, we know how to react, we know where they've been, we know what to sanitize, and we know we can bring another crew in, that's safe and healthy to continue our operations, as a company. For the most part, we have lots of logs and lots of different things that our leadership from Ken has, brought down to the rest of our group to be able for us to manage this as smartly as possible and really provide resources to the guys on the ground, our chiefs and our guys in the plants who are really leading the charge to make sure that we're ready. Ken, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think just to underscore what we've seen, as Carl said, this changed very rapidly over the period of time. We're into like week 4 here of our planning, and early on we saw, we would ask folks what they were doing on the customer side, and there was a lot of, we've got to get back to you. Now it's kind of flipped around, and they're obviously very active in that. On the construction side and access side, we quickly went from, having visitors, kind of regular visitors coming to the sites, and having them fill out the required forms for clearance, understanding where they've traveled to, if they had any symptoms, those sorts of things, to now it's very limited access. We have some critical projects that we need to finish up for capacity requirements and other longer-term things. And what we've done is work to separate those activities where possible, and we found that it is possible in most cases 100% from our staff, so that we don't have any risk to contaminating, any of our folks on site, especially in the control rooms and our key operations.
So Ken, Carlisle, and I'd like to get input from others on the call. Have you advanced to a essential staff and others on a work from home basis? Have you sort of advanced to that level of segregation?
Yes. At UT Austin Quan, we have.
Yep, Carl, you're on mute. Yes, we have, Rob. So basically, I think it was about a week and a half ago, we went to work from home for all our office staff and non-essential staff. And then we've looked at shift rotation, the type of shift rotation, and even isolation between shifts and how we would hand over shift rotation so that we didn't have, the different shifts coming in contact with each other. And then even daily call-ins by our operations staff to advise on, what's their condition? Are they healthy? What's going on? Just making sure that, what's the mood as well. There's a big psychological aspect to this too. And then we have everybody reporting in across the organization with sick logs on a daily basis. Any travel log. We did have some folks on travel that we had to track and understand when they were coming back, and they had to go into self-isolation, those sorts of things. But a big part of this, we have a daily call with staff, with the general managers across our fleet. And, part of it's just making sure that we have, and Carl will probably speak to this, the community aspect of it, that, we're all working together on this. And that we don't have a situation where somebody feels like they're isolated or alone or trying to deal with this all on their own. We're all working together.
Right. Well, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ken. Please, go ahead, Juan.
So at UT Austin, we are basically only essential employees and really essential employees. We're doing some maintenance in the plant. We're doing some critical work in the plant, so we have to continue on. Operations staff is still going on. We haven't transitioned yet to the going to op shifts for maintenance personnel yet. Everybody else is still at home, basically working remotely. So we're in the process probably today. They're going to actually start winding down some research functions. I don't know what that's going to mean. We're waiting to see what comes out on that. We're still waiting on guidance as to how they're going to handle the pay. And now that basically the concept is if you come into work, you're an essential employee, and so they're trying to work up some additional compensation for that response. The ones that are home basically get emergency leave, and we want to keep them at work. If they can do work remote, they will do work remote. But we're all really in a period of trying to figure ourselves out at this point. The city of Austin has put out a guidance for critical employees. Basically, what they're trying to do is there's no PPE available. I mean, you can't get even thermometers. And so they have a comment in there about if you're over 99.6, you're not going to come in. But no one can even do a proper temperature test on a person. You get a lot of false positives. And so they're doing some practical things. Screening them at first, you feel bad if you don't come to work. So they're trying to do that first and then limit the people that come into our facility.
Yeah, and so really what many of us have, I think, been hearing regularly, CDC guidance, if you're feeling symptoms, please stay home. That seems like it's sort of universal. And on the, I know I got an email from Steve Swinson at TECO. He said that they've gone to limited essential staff, and then non-essential are working from home. They have some projects underway that they're managing, sort of both safety and completion, but the effort has been reduced. Are others in experiencing any project stoppage, constructor stoppage, enforced restrictions from local jurisdictions?
Rob, this is Ken Smith at Evergreen. I'd like to, under previous information, much like everyone else has identified, we've split our shifts. We've only essential staff is operating. Everyone else is from home. One of the things that we have done, because now you have states that are going into shelter in place or some kind of an order like that, we have put in our hands of all staff that they are an essential worker. We've gotten language around that, tied it to a CISA document that came out of Homeland Security, so that each member of our team is armed with a document. We have already heard from other utilities that when they tried to get into a building, they wouldn't let them into a building when they had to get in and do maintenance. It wasn't from a district energy utility, but other utilities. And so this is one of the reasons we wanted to arm them with that, but also protect them if they're trying to get to their shift. It hasn't come to that yet. Minnesota's not locked down, but we're anticipating that's going to happen today or tomorrow, that we'll get that order. It's already happened now today in Wisconsin. So that's, if folks have not, that's something to think about.
Can you share that document?
Ken.
Yes, I'll send it to Rob and he can get it out.
Yeah, that would be great. Please forward it to jason.idea@districtenergy.org, and we'll post that as part of this this proceeding. We've set up a page for content like that, either shared documents or directives. So Ken Smith, we'd really appreciate that, because that is, I think, one of the things that's coming. will be, if not lockdown, maintaining access for key personnel to, facilities and plants and or, customers. So does anyone have anything to add on that topic? Risk level, access, restriction?
Yeah, Rob. So yeah, we've obtained that as well from Department of Homeland Security for Enwave and all our U.S. sites. And then we've also coordinated with the local response, whoever the agency is, whether it's the city or the state or both, so that we're on all of their relevant lists so that we do have access to, move our equipment and our people as needed, because that's, certainly I think we can all foresee this coming as that the lockdowns are, more readily happening. So I encourage those folks to make sure that you're preparing on that side. In Canada, that also has been going on, and Carlisle could probably speak a little bit more to it in terms of the efforts that we've been doing there.
And Ken, just to stay, so there's a Department of Homeland Security has is it a form or what is it that you fill out a form and then that's approved? So it's like basically an access pass for your staff. Is that?
Yeah. This may be changing, but when we applied, different Ken there. When we applied for it, we actually contacted the Department of Homeland Security. They asked for a letter from us to explain what our business was and why it was essential. Provided that to them, and then they provided a letter back that gave us access to move about.
And I don't know whether, so to Ken Morrison, I don't know whether that's readily available, the letter that you sent and the response. That might be useful information if it's available to IDEA for posting so that, people can replicate and follow up. If that's possible. I don't want to put you on the spot. Because it's my sense that sort of the lockdown is likely to happen in urban centers or, sort of population dense centers. So that, I think that's one of the, kind of early action suggestions we would make. Anyone else have, thank you very much, Ken, both Kens, by the way. Anyone else have anything to share in this regard, security, access, limits?
Well, this is Dan Quinn with Stairway. We pretty much have been doing the same thing because we're having trouble reaching out to different organizations to get what the definition of essential personnel are. And for the most part, it's not listed that, our business and distribution systems aren't listed under like electric companies. And I didn't know that. IDA could even reach out to do something that's get our businesses listed as essential personnel with the different ones. I mean, emergency management associations and agencies, we've been in contact with them and they'll give us a letter along with our employee ID cards that say that we're also essential personnel that works.
Right. Yeah, I think Dan, part of the question is where's the jurisdiction, right? So more than likely there's a local jurisdiction, as Ken mentioned, right? Is it local public health director? Is it governor? Is it mayor? Is it all of the above? So what we'll try to do, I don't know that we know exactly how to advance that, but we'll try to curate the message and make that available from our members as they've succeeded in getting either status or clearance or being declared. I think we're posting, if we have not already, Governor Baker we're in Massachusetts. He just earlier today issued a lockdown, not necessarily a lockdown, but a stay-in-place order, and in it there is a description of essential personnel. So I read through it quickly, and I think it does indicate like utility resources, but I doubt it's as specific as district energy resources. So my advice may be that for the time being, just until we can get more clarity, declare yourself a utility or a utility type service. But we'll try to locate and post more information there. And that'll be on our website. Yeah.
Rob, this is Ken Smith. So part of the challenge is the information coming out of, at least in the states, out of the Homeland Security, is it lists energy and it lists power, natural gas, and basically petroleum. So there's a gap there. It does not say utilities. It'll say electric power generation. And so while you might have one state that says utilities more broadly, other states may be just pointing to that document. So what we did is we don't have this in Minnesota yet, but other states have done it, is point to the documentation out of Homeland Security. I have forwarded it on to Jason and on to you. And then because we serve multiple sectors that are listed in that document, indicating the sectors that we are serving, and then we've shared that letter with our local authorities. The local authorities depends upon which city. Unless the city has done something, it's coming out of the state. And each state, it looks like it's doing it a bit different. So we've sent that letter then to our state folks. We've sent that letter to the local authority having jurisdiction. So in this case, a city emergency operations center, which we've gotten feedback. This looks great. This is what we need. And so that's been very helpful. But don't assume if you say you're a utility, you're good, because that definition, depending on what's coming out of the state, may or may not cover you, and you don't want to be in a reactionary mode. So I would say be proactive, try to reach out in advance. Right.
And specifically, one of the things we're talking about is the ability of personnel to, travel within cities, within jurisdictions, have access to customer buildings, have access to, secure locations, and really be able to sort of, basically do their job and have the appropriate credential on their person so that they're not unduly restricted, right? That's really what we're talking about here, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I would ask again.
Rob, I want to make one comment, and that is that this morning yesterday we got told that GE is no longer allowed to travel as well. So we've got some issues on the turbines, and so they're not going to be able to. All they can do is call in. They're not going to come to site anymore. So this is happening, and more. The city is on the verge of shelter in place, but they're going to have some language with respect to the critical infrastructure. So, but anyway, I just wanted to make that point that we're starting to see that some of the people are supporting as well.
Yeah. So Juan, you raised a good point that you're operating, you're providing mission critical service to, a few hundred buildings, and you can't be impaired from maintaining or repairing, critical assets, right? So that may be another thing that we want to monitor and cover if we, as an industry, are experiencing kind of critical resources are being limited or constrained. They're like a technician, perhaps, that's critical to, repairing a turbine or control or something. It would seem that, we need to be able to, request special consideration for access to those experts. It would seem, too, that maybe caution is the watchword now, that if you haven't commenced, kind of off-season or pre-season, maintenance or teardown, that, almost like essential surgeries or I forget the term, but probably better to just, not undertake unnecessary projects that would potentially take equipment offline. Can we come back to the emergency preparedness plans? One of the things we're hoping to bring forward, to the extent people are comfortable with sharing, do you have written emergency preparedness plans? Do you have shelter-in-place protocols? Do you have HR or other sort of, best practices that you're able to share to IDEA? For instance, definition of essential staff, or, how to, log time. We're in a few minutes. We will see the NWAVE SharePoint site where they've collated a lot of this information. But I guess at this point, I'd like to ask: do people have either documents or guidebook that they are able and willing to share with IDA, that whether it's redacted or not, that we could post so that our members can find and resource rather than reinvent? I'd like to open that for discussion.
This is Dan Quinn again. We do have most of the policies in place, and actually we're just happy some of them where we actually have a 7-day sequester plan where just our operators are basically will be 7 days at a time sleeping in the plants. We're all set up for that now and have food available for them. After 7 days, they would get relieved, and we're finishing up the HR part and paying how we're doing that. It's pretty much finalized. I would have to check. I don't know if there's any reason that I can't share, but I will find out with all our plans. But I think, yeah, our main plan, and we had a policy, a company policy, and then each individual facility has a plan following that, but gets down to the nitty-gritty for what they have to do at each site, because we're staffing issues at all our sites.
Sure. And Dan, I don't mean to be presumptuous and ask you to, provide either, commercially sensitive or, or internal, documents. And please don't feel compelled if it's inappropriate. And by all means, please get the appropriate assurance. And then perhaps one other option could be that if possible, if you wanted to send it to us in a format that we could then redact either the name of the organization or the locations, sort of black that out, and then it's in sort of, I don't know whether that's, helpful, but it might be prudent, for IDA to, just be sort of redacting the best practice guidance so that, there isn't any unintended liability that falls from it.
Okay, I'll check on it.
All right, Dan, thanks a lot. So somebody's phone is on, I'm not sure why that is happening.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right. So one of the things we did talk about earlier, Ken mentioned, is testing protocols. So if people actually, do come to the location and they're presenting symptoms, is that something that people are currently handling, and is that something that we should be discussing? Just employee safety at this time?
This is Greg at Western Washington University, and we're kind of figuring this out as we go, like most of you. And one of the protocols we've established, and I heard Juan with the no thermometers, but we just adapted and tried to use. We're using our Fluke pipe temperature monitor and checking people on the head, and it's not precise, but it does add significance that we're taking entry to the plant seriously. We're a relatively small plant, just 5 employees, and that seems to be going well. And it gives us a baseline for our normal employees of what looks well for them, since it's a surface temperature, not internal.
Yes. Well, thank you. Is anyone else, doing sort of an entry screening, temperature, like we've all sort of seen at airports? Anyone else doing that?
Yeah, so we do that.
Okay,
So it's Ken
thanks.
Morrison here from NWAY. We certainly are doing that both with anybody that's coming on site as a visitor. They have to self-declare on that. And then our staff as well, if they've come back from travel. Basically at this point, everybody's in self-isolation for 14 days. And then the regular check-in with our staff, the guidance is if you're sick, call in sick. And then, what is it? Is it flu-like symptoms? Is it confirmed as COVID-19? Is it something else? So we can understand, what next actions we might need to take in that situation. That's happening regularly. Bailey.
And I guess this is a question. Are people finding that if staff or employees are presenting symptoms, it seems like the current guidance is to contact your physician, maybe stay, unless severe, avoid the emergency room. But I guess, if people really are experiencing what look like COVID-19 symptoms, and I am not a physician, but are people then able, to access, tests? Has anyone on the call had a staff member or colleague actually test positive for COVID-19 yet?
This is Greg from Western Washington University. We've had, I think, 2 confirmed positives within the campus community. One was a construction worker on a site behind the fence, a carpenter. That couple people were sent home for observation, but otherwise that construction is continuing behind the fence, and the contractor working that out. And then we had 1 student that tested positive, and our school is continuing in status of open, but all coursework's been transferred to online. And we are right now on spring break, and we're reopening, resuming classes a week later, and plan to do all spring break online, or all spring quarter online.
Yes. So have your students been instructed not to return to campus?
That hasn't gone out yet. The campus is sensitive to students where our when they don't, maybe they're international and they can't realistically go home, or we're about an hour and a half north of Seattle. They may choose to not go back to Seattle where there's a higher incidence of problems.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it's a challenging moment.
From Engine Paris. If I may say a few words about Europe, as we are probably a week ahead of you, if that's fine.
Yes.
So,
Please, Michael.
Please don't tell your employees, don't go to visit a physician or go to hospital. In Europe, we have clear rules. You have to stay at home. And we're doing a video, with a medical doctor. So, video analysis. And going to hospital is only for people who have very strong breathing difficulties, so for extreme cases. So that's the rule now all over Europe. From the operational point of view, what we did, all the universities, all the schools, kindergarten, everything is closed, of course. So we split our teams, as somebody already explained, so to avoid having contacts between the A and the B teams, and we moved from 3 shifts to 2 12-hour shifts. And I think it's okay for energy departments but we have difficulties, of course, with client solutions. And in France, we have 46,000 people working in services, and we are getting extremely short on breathing masks. So that becomes a big issue for us. But for continuity and energy, doesn't seem to be a problem for us or for other utilities in Europe at the time.
Thank you, Michael. As you mentioned at the start, the telehealth, right, or sort of a remote or virtual, doctor visit. I think that's something we'll need to explore. It's probably jurisdictional, but I think that is sort of the prevailing guidance here as well. I just I wouldn't know how to access it, frankly. So that's something we'll see if we can uncover a bit more. If anyone on the call has either experience with how to activate a remote health screening, we would certainly appreciate your sharing that with us at IDEA.
Rob, I think it depends on Blue Cross Blue Shield serves us on campus, and they have a telemed. So Blue Cross Blue Shield, it depends on whoever the provider is.
Yes. Well, that adds another sort of level of complexity, doesn't it? Yeah. So
Rich,
for employees, yes, please.
For us, we have provided our staff with at our district energy plants. We have provided our staff with thermometers. I actually give them to them before there was a shortage on thermometers, and they check their temperature prior to driving into work, and that has been successful. We have not had any employee complaints of having to do that, or anybody showing up to work on with a fever. If they do have a fever, they call into their supervisor, they call in sick, they call their physician, and then there's a process for them to follow. If their physician releases them back to work, then they can come back to work as soon as they have 24 hours without a fever. But if they do have symptoms, then they stay isolated and they are not back until they are cleared by their medical provider.
So, Rob, this is Kim.
Rich.
We are also looking to use a third party. Some of our organization is looking to use a third party screening company that they will actually be stationed at points of entry for some of our facilities, our critical facilities, and they will be providing the screenings of the employees at that point. But that hasn't been set up, finalized yet, but that's the direction we're headed with it.
And Rich, that's Austin Energy, correct? The municipal utility in Austin. Yes, thank you. Anyone else have either protocols? So Rich, that's very interesting. You've actually provided thermometers to people so they can sort of, self-identify. That's very interesting. Has anyone else implemented a similar sort of, guidance to staff, employees?
Yeah, Rob, it's Sam at Yale. We're doing the same thing. We were able to get our first aid kit provider to give us thermometers, and we've asked all our people to self-monitor. No complaints from them. Everybody understands the reason for it, and so far it's been going reasonably well.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it would seem that, that's not an unreasonable request, but it's interesting that, I mean, if you're, it may be that you're hesitant to utilize a thermometer that you're also using on your children or grandchildren. I mean, everyone has to take all appropriate precautions, but that's interesting that that tool has been made available. I did want to, I know it was brought up earlier, PPE and limitations of supply. Is that an issue that, facing people that, just appropriate PPE face masks if staff are actually, public facing? Is that rising as a concern?
Rob, this is Darius with Tufts University. The Tufts Medical Center is receiving donations from various contractors that have construction safety masks and face shields. We've had to receive and then disperse some of these orders because the bands are rotten on some of the aged equipment. So our different students and workers throughout different cities are receiving these and going through Joann Fabrics and other supply stores, basically clearing out the aisles, putting new bands on those masks and putting them back into operation, all going through a duration of cure and making sure that they can put them back into circulation. So we have our maker spaces being put into operation with the 3D printers. Any students that are left are down on a lower campus. Our upper campus is potentially being repurposed for a militarized zone for a tent operations with design teams currently working on mixed air conditions and space pressurization so that we can either house patients or healthcare staff. Our Boston campus has already started repurposing some of the dorm facilities for healthcare staff and for parents who are actually both working as emergency responders in emergency daycare center, space pressurization in the daycare center, negative controls for the other occupied spaces. We are evaluating whether our energy recovery wheels are also potentially causing a transfer with HEPA filtration being not implemented in all these spaces. We are trying to figure out whether we just seal them up or turn them off and maybe look at different locations that don't have that potential exposure.
Oh, Darius, that's a combination of both admirable and frightening that, energy recovery wheels, may be exacerbating, a problem. That's very interesting. And enlightening. Thanks for sharing that. That staff are basically, volunteering to, kind of rebuild or rework PPE inventory. That's also commendable. Are there any other, circumstances that people would like to share as it relates to, either public or employee sort of safety protocols? Recognizing that many of you have significant staff with, obviously, everyone is under, I think, some the pressures of complexity and personal circumstances, but particularly to our campus members, is it generally the trend then that the campuses are being vacated, that the students have left or are leaving? Is that kind of the more or less the standard operating procedure now? Generally vacant buildings?
Hey, Rob, this is Tom. Princeton.
Yes, Tom Nyquist.
So to answer your question, we sent students home about 2 weeks ago. One of them was student break, but they were instructed not to come back after student break, and of course they're going to be going to virtual classes for the rest of the year. But the official policy of the university is that we are open because we're doing these virtual classes. That research, for the most part, is continuing. So all staff has to show up to make sure that the infrastructure is still going. And we still have 450 students who could not get home. So we have to provide food services and heating and cooling and all that for these students.
Tom, have they been like relocated to a central or a kind of an aggregated, dorm location, or or have they remained in the space that they originally occupied?
Yeah, they don't want to centralize them because they don't want to put them together. They're remaining in their existing dorm rooms. We do have one who is quarantined to the room because they were exposed to somebody who tested positive. So they're quarantined now. We have 2 professors that were coming back from travel tested positive, and they're quarantined.
Hey, Rob, this is Lalit at University of Nebraska.
Hello,
so here we have a situation where we have gotten about 50 to 60% of our students move out of the dorms. But we do have a few that are either choosing to stay because it's worse in their neck of the woods where they would go home, or they are international, so they are just staying here because there is nowhere to go back. So we have sort of done some consolidation. We have closed down 1 or 2 dorms because we are down to 40% capacity of our need. But to Tom's point, we are still doing some segregation still. There is 1 dorm that is dedicated for self-quarantine purposes, and that's the one where, because the numbers are so low in Nebraska right now, we have 1 student per floor right now that we have dedicated to.
Boy.
I'm sure that will change. It's changing every day, every minute, every hour. So.
Hey, Rob, this is Joan at Emory.
Hi, Joan. Yes.
Hey, just so similar to Princeton, we have vacated all of our dorms, but we actually have 2 centralized sites. One's for those who have tested positive, which is actually a growing number, and then another area where students that aren't able to return home. But the other thing we're doing is we're preparing our dorms near the hospital for overflow. So we're starting to make sure they'll be ready to serve if we get to a point where the hospitals exceed capacity and have to overflow into the dorms for emergency care.
Yes. So similar, Joan, then to Darius at Tufts, and it sounds like Tufts may even be further along, but that the universities are being potentially called on as areas of refuge and or overflow locations.
Good. I'm just trying to, I'm listening to IDEA COVID-19 call, but I'm happy to interrupt.
So you're live, whoever. Is that Bruce Onder?
So where's your email?
Bruce.
Hello, Bruce. You're live. Okay. So back to the topic at hand. And Joan, I know Emory is located fairly close to the Center for Disease Controls, correct? And some of the other hospitals?
Yes, we're contiguous. We're contiguous with them.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Yes. So in our sanitary sewers, so that's another thing, our sanitary sewers all combined. We're having to stop sampling at the water hub, our reclaimed water, just because of some, some heightened precaution that something maybe could be transferring through sanitary sewer. The other thing is we're actually starting to shut down some of our research. I know Tom, I think, said hadn't gotten to that level, but we've actually are now starting to shut down any research that can be viably shut down at this point.
And so that leads, thanks, Joan, that leads to sort of another kind of, range of issues here is, vacated buildings or shut down buildings. And I know on the IDA forum, there was a question posed the other day about concerns around either Legionella or, dormancy or, sort of standing water. How are people anticipating is that a kind of an area for action or precaution? Just the fact that, operations will be, impaired?
Yeah, Rob, this is Kent Riefstack, University of Illinois. I did send you our executive order from the governor to shelter in place, so we've got that for the state. We're kind of similar to Tom. We've, shut campus, and it was just prior to spring break, so it's been a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And we actually have a lot of foreign students, so we've got 4,500 still in the dorms, even though everybody's that can go home has went home. And we do have something for protocol for flushing all our domestic water prior to bringing buildings back online, as they the plan hasn't developed to the point where we've activated it, but when we do, it will. And we're down to a skeleton crew for all of our facilities. All our capital construction is on hold, except for those that have been deemed an emergency. There's very few of those. So we're very, very limited in what's going on here.
Yes. Geez, Ken, and that's actually an eye-opening number. 4,500 foreign students still, where you're still accountable for them and have to provide resources, et cetera. That's a long way from being vacant. That's for sure.
They aren't all foreign students, but that's the total number that we have to accommodate now. So.
Yes. Yeah. Oh no. Thank you for that clarity, because I do think that there for many students the circumstances to which they'd return may be actually more frightening than where they are. For our downtown systems, are you sensing that there's also a kind of a vacancy? Is there a circumstance that's sort of evolving where customer buildings will be less occupied and less will operations staff be limited? What are you doing in terms of just interaction with your urban downtown kind of commercial customers? Does anyone have any insight to share there?
Yeah, Rob, it's Ken Morrison here again. So we're seeing it depends a lot on the market and who is served off the system, of course. But what we're finding is a range of things. In some spots, there's not much change. Maybe that's because it's shoulder season. In other spots, there's perhaps a bit of a drop in kind of the daily amount slightly, but the minimum at night seems to be about the same. We do have some smaller systems where the customers are actually, shutting off from the system. So we're trying to manage, so that's a regular question that we have now is, are we seeing capacity changes and what do those look like, both increase or decrease? And we do have a number of systems that have significant hospital operations off of our systems for steam in particular, and trying to make sure that we're not seeing a rapid change there as the situation might entail. And then, of course, we've got people that's okay, as we see changes, what does that mean? So trying to think through, much like that Legionella question, what does that mean? What do we need to be considering or thinking through as we work through that? And we've been working with customers, too, to maybe change some of the set points in the buildings so that, they don't need as much energy, but to keep the energy flowing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Northern Hemisphere, we're sort of, moving from winter into spring. So as you mentioned, sort of shoulder season. I think that, it'll be important to kind of maintain a continuity of communication with members. Is anyone experiencing any or anticipating any supply chain limitations, access to fuels or chemicals, or just sort of monthly delivery of soft goods or disposable goods? Is anyone seeing that yet?
Not seeing it yet, but we've been trying to keep our chemical tanks and all. That was the first thing we did was top off all our fuel tanks, our chemical tanks, just in preparation. Right. Being in the shoulder months now, those tanks will last a long time until we can, with usage being down. In the cities, I think mainly the one that we're seeing difference in is if we had a city with convention centers, because they're all shut down, and a large amount of holes on our system. Definitely, they're way down too. So we are seeing a drop in usage from customers like that.
Yes, right. The sort of discretionary accounts, I think, will be restricted certainly for the immediate future. Let's talk a little bit, if we could. Yeah, please go ahead.
Sure, it's Carlisle here. I think just, the message from our end is what we've been seeing is that nothing has happened, I guess, concretely, but there is a lot of fear from the vendor community as to whether they will be delivered, given that different areas are calling for states of emergency at different timing. Ontario actually just announced at 1:30 today that as of 11:59 tomorrow night, only essential services will be open for 2 weeks, 14 days time. Which means that they're going to publish the list tomorrow as what are essential services. In that period in time, we're hopeful. The politicians are drinking from a fire hose right now. We're hopeful that they're being thoughtful, and we're feeding into the plans with all our political lobbyists and different things to be able to ensure that our supply chain is a part of that discussion, but I don't suppose we should leave it to those players at this point in time. We should be stockpiling things and being able to communicate with each other. I think inventory management might be a place where we can work with each other. If anyone has a failure, or if anyone has something and they need a part and they can't get it, if there's ways for us to be able to leverage each other as an industry, that's a huge value add we may be able to create from a community standpoint.
Right. And, and I guess I would like to echo one of the, thanks, Carlisle, one of the things that Sam Olmstead, shared at the campus conference, which seems so long ago, but the notion that things break, right? And so, we'd like for IDEA to be a resource if in fact someone finds themselves in need of a 12-inch rising stem gate valve or some form of butterfly valve or, I don't know, any sort of insert that, it may not be readily available through the typical, sort of vendor resource. To the extent if, please post on IDA Connect that you're in need of an item. I would urge you to include the notice if it is an emergency and how to contact. But there is also, we'll get to this in a minute, but IDA, there is, for all of you that are members, there's contact information so that you can reach out to and for each other. I don't know that, I certainly want to echo Carlisle's point that, within our industry, there are some unique, I think, specific requirements that we should all be cognizant of trying to help each other, given, given the condition, the unique equipment that we all monitor. If we could maybe talk for a moment about, communications, because that has now come up a couple of times. Are people actively, reaching out or talking with either, their downtown customers or municipalities, the mayor's office, public health director? And then finally, I would assume this is not the case, but are people experiencing any sort of media inquiries? I would tend not to think that, but is anybody have anything that they'd like to share about how you're handling external communications with stakeholders?
So, Rob, this is Ken Smith. What we've done is we have sent a communication out to our customers about what we are doing and where they can connect with us if they need to. So that has been an ongoing item, and we have been staying in contact through our customer care team with our customers. We also have connected with the emergency operations centers in each of the areas that we're working so that we have a line of communication with, and that's generally going to be through a city, but it could be at a campus as well. So, for example, in Milwaukee, through the Milwaukee Regional Medical Center, Emergency Operations Center, but also connecting with the local authorities. So in this case, we're connected with the city in Duluth, and we're connected with the city in St. Paul, and getting on their daily list. So as they're sending out alerts, getting that information. The other thing, because they're going to have some information ahead of time, right? So anything that we can get a heads up on that. And if we have an issue, then they can let us know. Also connected with the state and try to stay connected with them through whoever is the right authorities there to make sure that we're getting information as it comes out. One thing that I want to go back to, one of the protocols, maybe I missed it because I couldn't get on right away. One of the things we're doing is in shift changes in control rooms. This thing will live on a surface, in some cases surfaces for 2-3 days. So if you're not thinking about this when you're changing over shift from your control rooms, you probably should be wiping down surfaces, wiping down screens, wiping down keyboards, anything that are common surfaces that folks are going to be at. And so we do that between shift changes. There's no interaction between them other than electronically. Everybody's social distancing, obviously, but between shifts, and then before a shift comes in, it gets all wiped down for the next shift.
And that's fine. Yeah, we did the same thing. We used the chlorine bleach solution and spray bottles, and they're doing the same thing.
And let me ask.
Clay It's Clay Kelly from University of Nebraska. We're doing the same thing. We're wiping down all the surfaces, each break room, the refrigerator handles, the microwave, the coffee pot, everything else. We've also purchased additional, we've given everybody their own keyboard and mouse that they can store in their locker. So when they come in, they just plug into a USB hub. That way they don't have to worry about disinfecting the mice or the keyboard. That's a pretty inexpensive solution to that.
Interesting.
We've also been encouraging guys. We've been encouraging our operators too to think about it like you're going to the gym, where you wipe down every piece of equipment after you leave it or after you touched it, so it's sanitized for the next person. So, because if somebody goes sick in the middle of a shift, we have no idea what they touch. So, if they're out there operating equipment, they wipe it down quick what they touch, then we know it's pretty much safe for the next.
Right. Very good. That's helpful.
Hey, Rob, this is Greg at Western. I had one question for the group about essential tasks. Our crew feels the need to rebuild the feed pump, and they're going to start that tomorrow, and it's unavoidably a two-person job. How are people handling tasks when they can't keep social distance, either for safety or just the necessity of the work?
Very good question. Anyone care to respond to Greg?
Yeah, so what we're doing, we have a similar thing. We have a bunch of cable pulling we're doing right now, those speed upgrades where they have to be in close contact. So they're wearing gloves, but you also have to be aware. You have to know how to put the glove on and how to take it off. You don't contaminate yourself. So they're doing those kinds of things, trying to keep their distance as best they can. The incidental contact, you screen yourself. Hopefully they're not ill when they got there. Hopefully they're not already been contaminated and not sick from the symptoms yet. But that's about all you can really do.
Juan, would they be wearing, goggles or, sort of screen and face mask, et cetera?
Well, I think that EA Mental Health and Safety would like for us to do that, but they're not available. And if you guys get set up for ventilators, they'd have to be clean shaven, they have to be fitted. They're not enough to go around. There's not enough masks to go around. I mean, those not even Tyvek suits. They brought that up. There's not enough of them to go around. They're not available. So I mean, this is a real challenge.
And Greg, this feed water pump, it's an essential task that if you don't proceed with maintenance repair, are you feeling at risk that it'll fail?
I don't see it as risk. It's just, and we're trying to keep as close to normal as we can with the general maintenance so we don't fall behind if it becomes a critical need. So we're trying to stay, in some ways, as normal as we can. One of the important things we've been doing, too, is we're a relatively small crew, is we're fortunate to line up some people from the shipping industry to be temporary backups. So if I run out of enough operators that were normal full-time, we now have a couple people that can be sort of the relief bench, which helps me sleep at night.
Yes.
One more thing I just want to make a mention is, Rob, is that we've also made a decision that we were not going to expose any employees that are 60 plus. We have quite a few of them. And so we're making a decision not to bring them in. Let them stay home. And so that's something else to think about.
And Rob, this is Jason Barrio at PICO.
Yes. Jason, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So I'll go back to the feed pump conversation and the discussion of risk. I think risk needs to be the reason that we would tear apart a feed pump. I think keeping things as close to normal is not the right approach. We are deferring maintenance in some cases for a couple of weeks until we find out the next step of information. If we had a feed pump that was degraded and it was my backup feed pump, we would probably work to fix that. Here at TECO, we're working to fix everything that was out of service before all this came into being, but we are deferring maintenance on non-critical. Staying normal is not in our profile.
And thanks, Jason. And is that really sort of a pound of prevention is an ounce of cure sort of thing? That that by that you don't want to risk a feed water pump then where you need a flange or something that is gets damaged or you don't want to be without that pump, right? As a result of taking on the maintenance task.
Absolutely. So that's the risk aspect of it. If I've got a piece of equipment that is serving as a backup and it breaks, now I have to evaluate the risk on my plant and on my sustainability and make a decision on whether to fix it or not. If it's a pump that's been broke for a month or two and we just hadn't got around to fixing it, we're going to defer working on that until things get back to normal. And that goes into tearing something apart for exploratory work. You may get the pump taken apart, find out you need an impeller, and there's not a vendor around to help you out. So you may have had a pump that was maybe not performing at 100%, but was performing well enough to be a backup or an emergency pump, and now you've taken it out of service. You've lost that backup pump. So at TECO, we're evaluating everything, but we're evaluating everything from a risk standpoint, not from a normalcy standpoint.
Yeah, so that pump that's been cavitating and the nuisance noise for the last 6 months, you're going to bear with it as opposed to kind of taking the action to repair it until further notice. One of the questions that came across in the chat, and Juan, this is to you. What concentration of bleach are you using? Because it would seem to me that is like the sort of the sanitization issue and having access to the liquids. Are people? Yeah, please.
It depends on the strength of the bleach. So if you're buying commercial bleach that you would buy at the grocery store, I think it's like 5 tablespoons to a gallon. You got to be careful because if you're going to be using the bleach and you're putting it in a cooling tower, it's much higher strength. You have to be careful about that. But there's guidance out there from the CDC to tell you how to do that. I think it's like 5 tablespoons conventional bleach. It's 5 tablespoons per gallon, something like that.
Okay, so that's the dilution. I think there's also an alcohol content guidance too, right? For standardization.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not an expert on that. So I don't want to delve into putting anybody at risk here. And I apologize, Rob. I got to run because I know that it's my fourth conference of the day.
No, thanks, Juan. I really appreciate making time. Yeah, very good. Thanks a lot, Juan, and we'll talk again soon. I wanted to actually turn the segment over to Ken Morrison, and Ken has prepared EnWave in organizing. They've put together a SharePoint site that here. Let me move this down. Hey, Cheryl, are you able to move the ball to Ken? Cheryl Jakes? I don't know if she's hearing me. All right, so let me see if I can do this. Oh, it looks like it's going now.
I can hear you.
Can you give it to Ken Morrison, please? There it is, Ken.
Yes.
So,
looks like I've got it here.
Yeah, very good. So EnWave has assembled a single source of a SharePoint site. I'd like for Ken Morrison to kind of walk us through what they've done. Ken, thank you.
Yeah, and hopefully everybody can see this now. And I want to say that this has been a significant team endeavor. And Colbert Phillips, who's on the call as well, she's our VP of People and Culture, has been instrumental, her and her team, leading the development of this because this is very much a people side of things. So I want to thank her for all that fantastic work that's gone into this. This is, I'd say, iteration at least. This is major iteration 2.0 for us. The intent of this was so that we could have all information relevant for our response for our various sites in one spot so that people didn't feel like they had to have numerous locations to go to get the right information. It started out with a simple toolkit that was built off of an Excel spreadsheet, and worked from there. We said, okay, let's get it onto SharePoint, make sure that everybody's got access to SharePoint. We provided training to all the managers and then to staff. We're actually monitoring people, how often they're going to this. I'll just rotate through some of this stuff so that you can see the various parts. So we do track our response levels for various sites so that we know where we're at on a regular basis. And then we've got in our toolkit what that response level is, so exactly how we categorize that, some other information here as well. The other advantage of using SharePoint is as things are posted, new information, notifications can go out to staff so they don't miss something. And we're also working with the IT group to be able to do, it's like an Amber Alert type of situation where we can actually text out to our staff as we need to the information. Not that there's many people traveling right now. We have had some of this, but we've captured all the various parts here around travel advisories and what people need to do. We have a decision tree on when somebody comes back from travel and how they're assessed. Going back to the home site here, we have various forms that we've been talking about that people fill in. Let me just have this click here. There we go. It'll load up in a second. So we have visitor logs that we talked about earlier. We have daily sick logs. So everybody in the organization is reporting in each day in terms of their health. So if they are sick, why they're sick. Is it flu-like related? Is it actually COVID-19? And then if it is COVID-19, have they recovered? And part of the thinking there is that if we have people that actually have it and recover from it, then we want to know who those folks are because they become kind of the hardened workforce, if you will. And then we've got the travel forms here too. Let's just see, what else do we have here? Prevention, and this gets into some of the things that we've been talking through. Now there's a flatten the curve video that we've put in, but the daily cleaning. So this is just a checklist of what is the daily cleaning that should be done. What does that look like? Sorry, this will load up here in a second. So disinfection checklist. And these are provided for guidance for the sites, but then of course the sites are looking at their specific situation and what they need to do. It's taking a second to load. And then we have, there we go, starting to come in. It's refreshing just a little bit slower. Things like hand sanitizers, how to use those. And again, the materials here are from accredited agencies, so CDC or the respective Canadian agency. So from the start, we've been working with providing information either directly from those agencies or providing links to those agencies specifically, everything to how to isolate at home if somebody does have COVID-19, how to take care of them, the hand washing, all of these sorts of things, social distancing guidelines. So again, it's a toolkit meant to have kind of one location for our folks to be able to go to. And again, if somebody, a manager or a general manager, somebody does get sick and they're out of action, everybody in the organization has access to this, so they don't have to say, well, where was that on a drive, or where do I find that now? Even right down to things like public health notices, So these are all the different locations that we serve, and what's the local advice currently from that local health agency. So Rob, that's kind of a quick tour. We have provided a screenshot of this screen here, so it can be posted on the IDA's website so that you can see how we've kind of categorized these. Yeah, everything from working from home. Cybersecurity becomes a big issue we've been working through on that, and we're going to be populating that. It's probably unprecedented, the number of folks that are working outside of like a secure network and making sure that we don't introduce other things, because what we're finding is that in times like this, people that are looking to do certain things are still out there and trying harder than ever. The number of attacks on our firewall, the number of phishing attacks went up dramatically after the first few days. It was unbelievable, just trying to trick people.
Wow. Ken, thanks a lot. I really appreciate your sharing this. I think EnWave, in consolidating all this information, and I really appreciate the local public health directives, because the conditions vary so dramatically from like city to city. I think it's very useful to have it in a singular location. So as Ken mentioned, we'll post this as a screenshot, and that way you can kind of see how EnWave has gone about organizing all of these categories of relevant information. Does anybody have any questions for Ken regarding this resource?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Is it possible to share the tools that you kind of showed real quick on the Excel also, or is that proprietary?
We're looking into that, so I hope to have an answer to that later today. I suspect it'll be fine to do because it's nothing in terms of a proprietary nature, but we're going to confirm that, let you guys know, and we can provide an Excel toolkit.
All right, thank you.
Carlisle or Colbert, do you want to add anything to this?
Ken, I think you did a great job covering it all, and we're also monitoring how much our employees actually go to the sites, which I think is also important. There's a lot of content on there, and we got to make sure that people are using it.
Well, one thing that I think we're all aware of is that things are changing rapidly, not only nationally, globally, but certainly locally, right? So I think the key is to just be aware that conditions could dramatically change very quickly, and sort of the operating parameters you have today could be very different an hour from now. So thanks very much, Carlisle and Ken and others at EnWave. So Cheryl, are you? Can you? Unless I can do it, I don't know if I can do it. Yeah.
You want control?
Cheryl, yep, please. Thank you. Again, thanks, Ken. So I'm going to just try to move fairly quickly now to wrap this up. Sorry, all right. So just quickly, in terms of standardization, I know there was some discussion earlier about and some very good sharing of what are the protocols, the duration, how are you sort of wiping things between shifts. I would imagine too that signage is an issue. People are posting signage about access and clearance, and if anybody has either signage that they've employed that they'd like to share, directives in that regard. If you'd like to, forward those to IDEA for our sort of posting, we would certainly appreciate that. We've already talked a little bit about procurement and delivery challenges, or even though, I think the, planning for those. We talked about inventory management to some extent. I think there are, again, there's both equipment and materials that are unique to District Energy. So to the extent that if you find yourself in a need or predicament, please reach out to IDEA. Please post on the IDEA Connect forum. I'd urge people to utilize that resource to just stay in contact with each other. Finally, we are interested in either tabletop or guidance, written policies that people have implemented and they're able and willing to share, so that IDA can sort of post these for review by our common members. Finally, Ken just mentioned the number of phishing and the alarming uptick in cyber security or cyber issues. Again, I don't know if people have any suggestions to the audience or to the group that would relate to hardening of assets or improving online security, particularly today with a large portion of your staff operating remotely. And then the other thing we just wanted to kind of bring out, if necessary, false alarms or actually intentional discredited issues. Have people had any experience with either malicious or events that you think would be germane to others? I don't know. There was something in where I live, which on the surface is totally absurd, but actually guys in like Tyvek suits going door to door saying that they've been sent by the sanitation department, right, to take readings. It's a page from a comic book, frankly, but has anybody had any kind of relevant issues that they want to share with the group, false alarms or cyber issues? Well, let's hope that all normalizes quickly. So finally, in wrapping up, I want to point you all to the IDA Connect. It's a member forum. You can post questions, inquiries, needs, etc. there. If you're not currently a subscriber or participant, please send an email to jason.idea@districtenergy.org, and he can help you to be active and activated. Basically, it's an online forum. It is moderated, so we check for content relevance and in advance. But we'd like to offer that as a way for people to stay connected. The membership directory is also available, so in order to reach your peers, that content is there. Please keep an eye on the industry blog where we will be, providing updates, etc. We have a business opportunities webpage. It's largely used for, requests for quotation or kind of project opportunities. But as we may use that to communicate not so much, emergency information, but projects or needs. And then we do want to open the door for questions or suggestions while we have you here before we close off. We have the list of all the people that have participated. Again, when the webinar closes, you'll be asked to fill in a kind of a quick survey. If you can, please take a few minutes to do that. We're interested in suggestions for future topics. If there are things that you'd like for IDA to drill down a little deeper on, please let's take a minute if you have any suggestions or other issues before we close. Any thoughts there? Okay, thanks. Yes, please. Unless you're all muted unintentionally, which may be the case. So let me suggest that please send an email to idea@districtenergy.org. Someone has
go on this on-call piece. Everybody's going to so that we can back it up.
If that was intended for us. Okay. So I want to thank, as we close, I want to thank Carlisle Catino from Enwave and Ken Morrison and their colleagues for urging us, to hold this. Again, you'll be receiving shortly a survey, but following that, the webinar has been recorded. So if you want to refer back to it or forward it to colleagues who perhaps didn't attend, I will make that available to everyone who's been on the call. And if you have any suggestions or topics for further discussion or kind of a follow-on working group meeting, please let us know. We'd be happy to try to coordinate accordingly. I know that these are very challenging times for everybody, professionally and personally. I want to urge you all to stay safe and look after each other and obviously your families and colleagues. Please let IDA know if we can help you in any way. We are a community of people that care, and so at that I'd like to just before we close open it to Carlisle and Ken if you had any closing thoughts.
I think, Rob, as we've been working through this for going on 4 weeks now, what we're finding is you can't be prepared enough as the situations change so rapidly in ways that we haven't anticipated. And so we continue to stay on this several times a day. We're doing things like tabletops on a regular basis at the sites as teams and just testing ourselves for what we think could be the eventuality of what may be coming locally. And then as a leadership team, trying to stay as much as we can ahead of and anticipate what we need to be thinking through. And I think what's great about a forum like this is it allows us to hear what others are doing and, trying to work through and make sure we don't have any blind spots as we move forward through this very unusual situation.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ken. I know it's moving so quickly, and I really do appreciate the leadership that you and Carlisle have provided on this, and obviously the goodwill from Enwave. And one of the questions that came across, we will make the slide deck available too. That link will be available for everyone, for future reference. And Ken, you mentioned, I think it's now incumbent on all of us to sort of see around the next corner, and it really is these are unique times. I hope before long we're able to look back on them and say we did the best we could. Carlisle, any thoughts from you as we bring to a close?
Absolutely. Really appreciate people jumping on the line and all the contributions. I think we all also learned a lot today on what's going on and taking the pulse of how different areas are reacting. We're definitely here to help in any way we can. We certainly don't have all the answers, but I think the more we talk, the more comfortable we feel as a community that we're supporting one another. So you certainly have our email addresses. Whatever we can send you, whether it be even our tabletop exercises or things, if they're helpful, if we can help you with that, just ask. And if we have the capacity, we certainly will put any of that stuff forward. And I don't think there's anything that's offside right now for an ask. So please do, and you may hear the same from us as well at this stage, so we can continue to support each other through this challenging time. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Carlisle. And Carlisle, you should all know, serves on the IDA Board of Directors, and has we want to thank EnWave for their continued support and leadership. And to all of you, please stay safe, stay well, and again, don't hesitate to reach out if we can help you. We're an industry association. We've been around since 1909. We're going to do our best to stick to it, but we're here really because and for you. So thanks for making time. And again, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be posting this information as it comes in. We'll be posting it, and we'll share with everybody, the appropriate links so that you can find it and reference it and forward it as needed. So again, thanks everyone for making time, and we'll talk again soon. Bye. Bye for now.